This is our first panel, so if it looks like I don't know what I'm doing, it's only because that's entirely true. I would like to welcome you guys to the Veterans in Gaming Embracing Common Ground panel. What we're going to do after we intro all of our awesome guests is go through just 4 primary topics and have a conversation about veterans in gaming and the various different ways we impact the industry and how the industry reacts to us. And after that, we will have a Q&A where you can ask whatever you want within reason. Don't know about anyone's pets, so keep it clean. You're not restricted to veteran-oriented questions for the Q&A. So with that, I want to do some introductions. Start down at this end.
Just myself. Okay.
Yeah.
Russ Bullock with Piranha Games in Vancouver, developers of MechWarrior Online.
Brian, creative director of Piranha Games.
Steve Machuga, Frontal Gamer. We're a military gaming site and operations supply route. We build video game care packages for troops deployed downrange and covering in military hospitals.
Well spoken, sir. My name is Mickey Ray. I'm the Public Affairs Officer for Black Widow Company.
I'm Tramel Ray Isaac, Senior Art Director, Planet Side 2.
Hi, I'm Chris Roberts. I guess. I don't mean it that way. I'm just trying to think what I'm saying. Lead creative designer, whatever, on Star Citizen. There you go.
I can follow that. Charles Gibbert, Black Widow Company. Great to be here.
And I'm Brent Russell, Black Widow Company as well.
So I was doing some digging around this morning, just looking for some fun facts. I almost did an infographic, but really, we're at PAX. And so crowds will turn on you quickly. But 8.6% of our population are veterans at this point. It's 21 million U.S. citizens. That is the urban population of New Jersey, New York, and Connecticut, or 1 million less than the entire continent of Australia. So it's a lot of people. It represents a significant demographic, not just in gaming, but that's what we'll be talking about today. So our first topic is what impact do military-themed games, all of which are represented here on the stage, have on an increasing population of active duty military gamers. So why are you guys making military games? What's up with that? Who wants to field that? Who's going to start?
I'll throw something out there. I mean, the original Planet Side and Planet Side 2, they're both team-based games. And, you know, who better to represent, you know, a team-based game is those who actually know how to work as a team. You know, that's what we set out to do from the get-go. With Planet Side 2, to make sure that people who are playing this game actually can get the full enjoyment of the game when they're in an outfit or with a group of people or in a platoon. All of our basically command structures basically, you know, modeled after the military. So, you know, who best to take advantage of that than the military? Those who have actually served or you know, actually get outfits with those who have actually served. So I think Planet Side 2 is more of a direct correlation between, as far as like the command structure in the military as it is in the game itself. And catering to that is more about you know, getting people to get into that organized group as opposed to just being a bunch of random people running around shooting people in the face. You know, so that's how it's really enjoyed. Planet Side 2 is really
Organized shooting people.
Yeah, organized space shooting is the way that Planet Side should be played. And I think you know, having, you know, people who have some military background in the game makes it that much more fun, because, you know, you have a bunch of people playing it, you know, they're just kind of playing it but not actually, you know, enjoying it to the fullest, because it requires a lot of structure. It requires that command structure. It requires some kind of leadership in order to succeed fully inside of Planet Side 2. And those who've experienced that are best capable of actually bringing that to the forefront.
So you know, Star Citizen obviously isn't 100% about military action, but since we're simulating a whole world and universe, obviously the military has a large part to do with that. And you know, I would say historically, for instance, my old games like Wing Commander, you know, I grew up and was a big military history buff. I used to do a lot of war gaming, and something like Wing Commander works really well when you're fighting a very clear objective against a very clear enemy, and that's generally would be in a sort of a military situation. And for narrative stories, it's actually quite good to be in that situation, because you have to go where your commander tells you to go. So you can't decide to go left instead of right. So all those things, but I mean, in general, I think that there's a huge amount of interest and lore and action that comes from sort of looking back at everything that's happened in sort of general military actions. And so generally every game I ever do, Wing Commander was basically the war in the Pacific, and the Kilrathi were the Imperial Japanese Navy, the US Navy and the US Marines was the Confederation. And again, in Star Citizen, that's kind of the concept, not necessarily the war in the Pacific, but it's the ancient Roman Empire sort of projected into the future. And instead of the Roman Empire, it's the Empire of Earth, and it's dealing with this sort of slow decline and eventual split of the two of the empire into two halves. And of course, the Roman army was a large part of that, as is the United Earth forces, the Navy, the military, the rest of it. So, it's always a great dynamic in games.
Absolutely. How about an IP that hasn't baked in?
I'll do a quick one. For me, it was really an education process by all of the veterans in gaming, kind of, letting me know just how important a game like that was to them. Because for us in the beginning, it was really just about a deep passion for MechWarrior and creating a great MechWarrior game. And as soon as the game was announced, we started getting contacted by all sorts of veteran groups, including Black Widow companies, saying, "Hey, super excited, here's a whole bunch of ideas for you. You should do this, that, and that, and that." And as soon as we started getting some of them into the earliest friends and family, closed betas, you could tell these guys weren't messing around. They were in there, and I got Bravo, calling out targets, and it's like, wow, this is pretty intense. And then all of a sudden it just comes flooding home. They're just right. I mean, there's not only so many features we can do that really supports the way they play and the way they want to play, but there's so much natural lore inside of the Battletech universe that supports that. All the factions that they want to be a part of, and then of course all the built-in military units within those factions. So it's all there. We just need to find great ways, and Brian and the design team to find ways to put that into the game. Even more and more, let you guys play with those factions.
Absolutely, so much fun. So we're going to move on to the next topic briefly. And this is more community focused. This is more for our guys and for Steve here. How are gaming communities kind of leveraging the experience that we all bring to the table, regardless of what service world we're in? How does that make a cohesive gaming community? Go for it.
All right. The community aspect of Fun Toys Gamer has always been a struggle, because it's just outside of putting veterans together with. We had trouble until the military aspect of Operation Supply Route came into play, and once we started helping out veterans and helping out soldiers who were deployed downrange, it really started to open things up. And it's been an amazing ride. It was helping out a friend who was deployed downrange first, and then his friend said, "Hey, you just sent this guy $1,000 worth of games and stuff. What about us?" And just started snowballing from there. We're 3 years in, and $350,000 of games and gear from pretty much everybody. I mean, there's only a handful of organizations out there that don't or just haven't worked with us yet, but everybody wants a piece of helping out military, which is a nice feeling. It's sick kids and soldiers, it's tough to say no to, so.
Well, I think, next question from Black Widow Company is a veteran-founded, owned, operated. We've got about 1,500 members, active. A good proportion of which are either veterans or active military. A significant number of people deployed today who are playing games with the community, and it stretches across all the continents. So I think really it's a shared experience. And you mentioned earlier, team. Right? I mean, fundamentally, I think when you're talking about the military context, be you Army, Air Force, Navy, Marines, no matter what country, it's all about being a team and executing the team. And I think that's what we bring to the table as we do well. That's probably the secret sauce of the world that makes these organizations very successful.
Yeah, just add on to that to say that, our members come in there with that common knowledge, a common playing field, and it brings us all together. So it's something we speak to pretty often. So it makes it very easy for even people that aren't veterans or are not exposed to the military at all to come in under our umbrella. And it doesn't matter. It's just the formula, the formation, and we even have training. That kind of indoctrinates people. We use our military experience and bring that into our gaming experience, which it trickles down to all of our members. So it makes it all inclusive, and it makes everyone feel like they're part of a community, even when we're 12 or 1,500 members, active members. If you're part of a group that large, people tend to get lost. And that's one thing that doesn't happen within our organization. The military always takes care of its own, down to the lowest private, and we want every gamer that's within our organization to have fun.
So from a developer's perspective, what's been your experience dealing with military-themed communities or veteran organizations?
Yeah, I think one of the awesome things about groups like BWC being represented in our forums or in our community is they bring this order and this honor to our community, which anybody who's been in an online community knows they can get a little unruly. And I see a lot of veterans being mentors, really, to a lot of young people, because we do have a full range of age groups from teens to people who are retired. And I love seeing how they bring people under their wing, how they represent that command structure, that honor system that they've had in their military careers before coming to our game. So I really appreciate what they bring to our community in that respect.
Yeah, I think as far as with PlanSide 2, I think the difference between a group like BWC and anybody else is they add like a contrast to what's like you got like a random group of outfit X or whatever. There is an outfit X. I don't want to see what they call it. There is an outfit named Outfit X. I don't want to be calling them out. I'm just saying, outfit random, whatever. But there's a contrast between those different groups of people, different types of play styles. So you can visually see how BWC plays versus Future Crew or be some other outfit that's out there, AT or Devil Dogs, for example. You can see how they play, like the different types of play styles, and that's based on their experience, BWC's experience, or outfits like BWC that have military members, versus teams like the Black Widow, Devil Dogs or Knock or Azure Twilight. Like their fighting style is a little bit different, but that contrast makes that battle that much more interesting, because now you're not, your tactics can't be predicted. Like, so that battle cannot be predicted. You never know what this outfit is going to do because they're not trained the way that you are. So I think it adds a lot of variety to our game, because there are plenty of different ways to win inside of PlanSide. So, having a group of teenagers playing a game who actually have some kind of command structure but don't really have the experience that you guys do, could still actually defeat you because they know the game better, because they don't have jobs.
I hear a challenge then.
Exactly.
Challenge accepted.
Well, let's just be honest, for real. Let's just be real. BWC's not the top outfit in our game, and that's got nothing to do with the fact that you guys have tactics and other people don't. It's just that it's time in and time out. So you guys got the structure, but you've got other people who've got a smaller group and they're experienced in first-person shooters, and they got that twitch down. So the older we get, the slower we get. Things happens. Hey man, we're the same age, dude. So, myself.
It's only funny because it's true.
Exactly. But I mean, it's that balance you get. So I think that's great. You got to have that balance. If everybody was the same, it would be fun. There would be no challenge if everybody had the same tactics. Like old school, everybody line up in the line and shoot at you. first line died, hey, you shoot over the head, and arrows over the top, and everything was all the same. But you get this guerrilla tactic, and you get like these other guys who are actually really regimented, and you get that variety. It makes, you know, spices up the game a little bit.
So,
That sounds like a great game mode.
You guys should try that out. That's a get everybody lined up.
Game mode, happy hour.
yeah. So on my side, I mean, because obviously Stas isn't playing it, I would say that you know, organization, focus, and singular voice is really great, especially when you've got a very big, evolving community. So it's you know, nice to have one group that has a very specific focus and works in a very positive manner in the community. So you know, I think that's awesome. I'm actually looking forward to when everyone can play in the game, because it's going to be really interesting. Because one thing that I found the most interesting with Star Citizen, and it's really early, but you know, there's obviously a lot of people that are part of the community now, and there are all sorts. There's groups of pirates, groups of traders, groups of mercenaries. You know, it's groups of bounty hunters, and everyone's sort of aligning into these alliances or you know, in opposition to each other. So I'm kind of interested when the game actually starts for real. It's maybe like World War III or something and kicks off. I certainly think that's where all the Idris Corvettes are being stockpiled for. But yeah, no, it's cool.
What you're talking about.
But I'm actually really interested, because we're trying to build a lot of different play styles to work for people who just want to play by themselves, people who want to play for a small group of friends, and then also people who want to play in a much bigger group. And so, you know, I personally find it completely awesome that you can have all those things in a game, and I think it's completely awesome that you have, you know, groups of people, Black Widow Company being one of them, that like really comes together for a single focus and work as a team and support each other. That's actually, for me, on the gaming side, one of the most things I'm the most excited by going forward, that I never had in the old days of making games, because you know, basically the Wing Commanders or even Privateer were you know, more single player, and Freelancer was kind of multiplayer, but that was sort of an afterthought. So it's going to be cool, and I'm looking forward to seeing what you guys do in the universe.
We're going to shoot people in the face.
Okay, you're going to shoot people in the face. There you go.
I'm pretty sure that's what organized shooting in the face. What's an interesting segue? It's an interesting comment that, you know, yes, we have mortgages, yes, we don't have, you know, 18 hours a day to spend, but in certain gaming models, disposable income can actually balance that out. Disposable income.
Just said the bad word, pay to win.
Well, you know, and there's a lot of that. People complain about that, and you know, people get salty about that, and yet it is somewhat of an equalizer. How do you guys maintain that balance?
Well, so far, I would suggest, I think that we have. You can play the game, you know, completely for free, but I would like to focus more on, I guess, what you said is it's kind of a reflection of the answer Brian gave before. It's extremely valuable to have mature, you know, players in your game. In MechWarrior, we have that advantage of such a long history. You know, we played the first ones together back in, well, I guess 1990 was the first MechWarrior. MechWarrior 2, 3, 4, and they were great. Similar to what Chris just said, is the past MechWarrior games were wonderful, but you know, you spent 5, 6, 10 hours playing the single player campaign and you were done. And you know, the multiplayer campaigns back for those games, I mean, the last one, MechWarrior 4, was in 2001, so the online experience was very limiting. So it goes back into, I guess, having mature players that have been around that long. They can really help a new generation of gamers play. But yeah, it's a great core audience to have, that most of our core audience now are 40 years old roughly and have full-time jobs and have a little bit of money to spend in the game, and it definitely helps a lot in the early stage of your game to have that core there.
So that kind of segues into our, you know, our next thing more for the developers. Is there a certain facet of your IP that you feel have been influenced by, you know, strict military themes, parts of your community, people that have come to you and said, I know we touched on this a little bit earlier, but you're either doing it wrong, you're not doing it right, or you're doing it too right. Like, this is almost such a realistic experience that it's freaking me out a little bit because I'm not there anymore, now I'm back here.
I'll certainly say on our side, since we're kind of doing this open development process, you know, and David Haddock, who's our lead writer, has, you know, his sort of Ask the Dev forum and talks about the writing stuff, and so I definitely know that his bane of his existence is coming up with the ranking system for the various branches of the United Empire of Earth's various military arms, because, first off, obviously the ranking systems vary between countries. So, you put out one and then you've got someone in England saying, no, that's all the wrong way. But yeah, I mean, basically the discussion that happens there is helping actually form the game. So, Dave and other people like Rob, our lead designer, actually, there's an ongoing discussion with the community, which in the case of the ranks inside of the UE forces is obviously mostly to do with people who are either military or ex-military that have actual knowledge of it. And it's sort of helping shape some of what we're building in Star Citizen for the better. And that's actually one of the things that I'm really happy with how Star Citizen's progressing, is that the community involvement is making the game better every single day in ways that I didn't anticipate or think when I started out, and that's kind of cool. And like I said, that's one of the nice things about something like Good Company, where it's like focused feedback, right? It's not like 1,000 voices going in 1,000 different directions. It's like, okay, here's our voice, here's our feedback, and that's actually very useful on a developer standpoint, because you can only listen to so many things at once, and so having a group out there that is sort of consistent and singular in its voice is very helpful.
That's true. Our signal to noise ratio is something we're actually pretty proud of. I like the commonality, the instant. PlanetSide 2 is a great example. I'm not a PS2 primary player, but the second I log into it, the second I go, okay, here's structure. I have a rank. I am part of this squad, which is a part of this larger unit. It's a platoon, and comms are run that way. Squad beacons. It creates that instant context. So community warfare is fantastic. I'm just saying, looking forward to that, being a part of that as well. But it's that instant, I understand where I am, who I am in relation to the other players around me, that I think is pretty significant. And there's no, just to be 100% clear, there's no accident that the 3 games represented here are the 3 games that BWC primaries. Because those are the properties that resonate with us as a veteran community. Like, this feels like home when we log in and we play these games. It's pretty amazing. So I'm going to segue clumsily then, because I do that, into gaming philanthropy, which is something that is near and dear to everyone. And we're going to spend a little bit more time on this probably than other aspects, because a lot of very exciting stuff has happened very recently. So we want to hit on this a little bit. PGI guys, please tell us about Sarah's Neck and how that came to be.
I've told the story quite a few times now. We've been lucky to have garnered a lot of local, domestic press and international press in the States and around the world. And I mean, the Sarah Neck story is pretty amazing. One that involves somebody from our community who had his daughter, Sarah, pass away. A local Vancouver man, that's where we're based out of in Canada, named John Perry's. And he wanted to share his story with us. Just requested a shout out really early on about his daughter being sick, and she was in a hospice. So if you've ever heard of like the Children's Hospital or Ronald McDonald's House or anything like that, it's a similar thing up in Vancouver, except it's from our hockey team, so that's the Canucks Place Hospice. And he's just like, hey, could you give us a shout out? My daughter's sick, she's here. And our community team, who's based at Montreal with our partner company IGP, was working with him to do that, and she passed away in the time between his first reaching out and us actually being able to post something. And so what was going to be a simple shout out turned into a beautiful forum post by one of our community team in her memory. And so that's kind of how it got started. From there, the community, which is awe-inspiring at the best of times and fanatical at the worst, was awe-inspiring in this moment. I think, I always get chills and emotional when I think about the story, because it's just proof that we're all human and we all share something in common. And that we all are parents or brothers or sisters or fathers or daughters or sons or whatever of somebody who's had cancer in their life. And it resonated with our community, and the amount of support that they gave to this person that they don't know in a country that they may not be a part of, or a province, or on the other side of the planet, was overwhelming. And they asked us, essentially said, this is what we want you to do, build us an anthem and we'll support you. So it was really from soup to nuts a community initiative. It was their idea, and we were really just a vessel to deliver this concept, to connect our community with this cause, and that's what we did. So we built a neck in her honor, and the community, not us, the community raised over $122,000 in less than 30 days for this cause, and it was an extremely humbling experience to be a part of their lives for that period of time, and to see such a positive thing come out of so many people.
What did that money go to? Your cancer research?
Yeah, it went to the Canadian Cancer Society, which is kind of the mothership foundation across Canada. There's regional, local branches.
So in argumentative life, your effort there then spawned Operation TLC. Can you talk about that?
Absolutely. So really from the Sarasmec initiative that you put together, it really hit our community. We have a significant proportion of the Black Widow Company players who are NWO fanatics, frankly. And so we got together as a group. It wasn't just the NWO players, it was everybody that said, let's go ahead and do something similar. So we put together a 24-hour gaming marathon. This was internal, by the way. We didn't go outside beyond friends, family, and just each other, and did a 24-hour gaming marathon with all sport games. 24 hours to plan, so I think we're online. All the other games that our players play every day, and raised it for St. Jude's. And we managed to raise in 24 hours about $15,000. And this was internal. This was, again, not out to the rest of the world. Really inspired by what Pete put together for the Sarasmec. So I think it's huge. I mean, we're no longer just sitting in our closet playing games, right? I mean, this has moved beyond into something that really can benefit the community, and I think we're all excited to do moving forward with what we're doing gaming.
Absolutely. I had a occasion to talk to Leslie Coleman from the Warrior recently, and she actually mentioned to you at Planet too, the apocalypse. Talk about that for a second.
Yeah, we ran basically a couple ads to, basically a streaming effort to raise funds for the Warrior. On my show on the Command Center on Twitch, and Friday Night Ops on Twitch as well. These are shows that we put on once a month for the Command Center, and every Friday for Friday Night Ops. Basically promoting Warrior, raising funds for that effort, and I think everybody's sensitive to that issue. So it's not like we're doing something that's extremely spectacular or unique, but everybody's wanting to pitch in. So I think what it boils down to is just like at certain points in time, we may compete against each other. On a day-to-day, you'd be NC, I'm VS, but at the end of the day, everybody cares about something that touches them in some significant way, enough for them to actually reach into their pockets and donate their time to a worthy cause. So, as an SOE, we thought that Wounded Warrior was a good cause, and it actually internally touches everybody that is involved with PlanSide. PlanSide itself is basically a military game, so we thought it was a good cause, and then now we're actually working with the Travis Mannion Foundation to work on another promotion that we'll be announcing some more details in the next couple of weeks.
You may not think it's spectacular, but speaking as a veteran, we think it's absolutely good.
No, I'm just saying, like, we're not the only people raising money. That's what I'm trying to say. We're not like, we're the saints of raising money. So
every effort is an awesome effort.
if it was a couple of million, then I'd be like, yeah, you suck. I raised the money.
So now it's a competition.
Maybe I have something to brag about, but it's a worthy cause, and I think everybody's, you can't find anybody who say, F the Warriors. Nobody's going to say that.
Right.
Everybody's going to be like, oh yeah, down low.
So, Chris, a lot of people have talked about there being a racing subculture in Star Citizen, something that's kind of not necessarily officially planned, but semi-planned, and doing charity races and events within that environment.
Obviously we're not live, so it's a little ways before we can do some of this stuff, but we're definitely going to have the opportunity to do competitive stuff outside of just assisting in the world, whether it's racing or some other stuff, even buggy racing perhaps. We'll see.
say.
Heard it here first.
Yep, you heard it here first.
But yeah, no, and the other thing that we're also going to do is we're going to enable the group. There's going to be a feature that will be rolled out, organizations, which will be in a few months on the website, but it will roll across into the game itself, especially when it's live, which is basically allowing people to create. So the Black Widow company will be an in-game organization. You can manage it. You can set the hierarchy. You can actually name your ranks. So different organizations can have different ranks, and you can do things like, time. You could have everyone has to pay their guild fee, or you could do a charity competition that will be arranged or whatever. And so we're going to provide the tools inside the game to do that, which I think will be kind of fun. And partly my goal is just to build this big sandbox and sort of see what great stuff people do with it, and also when we're up and running. Very happy to do the kind of charity stuff that Mike Warriors would do and like Toots would do, because I think it's incredibly worthy, and more of that should happen in the game industry.
I agree. Tell us about Supply Drive.
Well, the idea came in 2003. I was deployed right out here, Fort Lewis, to Iraq for 13 months. I was in 2nd Infantry Division. We were shooting it up with Al-Sadr in the south, and while we were over there with my infantry company, a local library decided to donate a crate of Harlequin romance novels to my infantry company. And actually, third hand, like ultra used. Yeah, and that was one of those defining moments. Like one of my guys cracked it open, I was like, oh, Christ. So we ended up using them. We did get some use out of them. We ended up using them on the confiscated arms live fire range. So we shot them. So they did have some use, but it was at that point where I realized, hey, they really want to help out, but it's like that 5th grade canned food drive where everybody brings in a can of yams and they think they're doing something, and it's like, well, great, now these homeless people have 26 cans of yams. Good job. So flash forward about 7 or 8 years, and then, again, a buddy of mine was getting ready to deploy for the 4th time in like 6 years. It was absurd. And he's like, hey, could you send me something? We were bored, and it all just came together. And since then, we've just been pushing forward. It's gotten to the point, it started out small, and now it's gotten to the point where everything is like, how can I do more? How can I help people? It is really I'm a one-man shop. I'm doing this on my own. And we've grown. Like, I've got a small community working around us now. But if I had Oprah kind of money or something like that, or it's just one of those things, like, I have really come to love putting smiles on soldiers' faces. And we would get those pictures back of them just holding up shirts and swag and Xboxes, and it's just, man, I just want to spend the rest of my life putting smiles on people's faces, and it's great fun. And as we were talking about, everybody wants to help in some way, they just don't know how. And everybody thinks it's like some sort of Vietnam movie over there, where it's just 24 hours of shooting it out with the bad guys, and it's like 1 hour of that a day when you're outside the wire, and then there's like the other 23 hours where you're sleeping, eating, working out, and just sitting around getting into trouble. And if anybody's done time overseas, it's a lot of sitting around and 15 seconds of chaos, and then back to the grind. And soldiers, you get guys who deploy out range, and if you've ever deployed, you look at that calendar, and it's like, all right, I got 326 days in a wake up, and you just see that, and you're like, I'm gonna be here, goddamn year of my life. It is a reason that the suicide rate for veterans and soldiers has gone to 1 soldier a day over there. It's insane. It's higher than the actual enemy killed or friendly killed in action numbers over there. So guys are just bored. They need things to take their mind off where they're at. And video games is it. And as we've seen, it helps soldiers suffering from PTSD and night terrors from coming in contact. And it has really turned into a real passion of mine. So we're just working to push things forward. So
that's amazing. Cool. So every instance, every example on the stage that prompted BWC, we just actually launched our gaming philanthropy brand, Play to Give Back, modeled half after Child's Play, half after the work Steve's doing. But definitely something that, being veterans, we have this continuation of service. Service is a core value in BWC. It's a core value of every military, every uniformed service that we're a part of. So that urge to continue to give back, to continue to offer service afterwards, is fairly strong. And the fact that you as developers provide these vehicles for us to do so is pretty amazing. So thank you for that. Definitely appreciate that. All right, we are at the end of the bullet point list that I had. So if we want to do a Q&A, we have a mic set up in the beginning. If you guys would like to ask these fine gentlemen up here any questions, go ahead and line up and then fire away. Metaphorically.
I'm just saying I don't have any weapons, actually. This is to the developers. Once again, thank you guys for coming out. Thanks to DOEC for putting this together. I'm sure you guys have all been there, promising things in your game features to the community that are well received, and due to pressure from the producers or lack of dev time, the natural things that happen in the course of game development, features don't make it into the final game or what have you. How do you manage the expectation of the community, the awe-inspiring or the fanatical, when these things don't make it into the game, and what do you do to sort of make it right, or if you can?
For us, there is no final product for us, so it's not really, it didn't make it in November 2012, so therefore it's not getting in. For us, it's a continuing process that we go through in order to add more and more content. Just as a couple of weeks ago, we just started to kind of step back and to optimize our game to make sure that it plays a lot better and a lot smoother on lower-end machines. But prior to that, between that time and the time that we shipped late last year, it was content, and then all of those things were features that would make the game easier to play, make the game we get that thing. But for us, it's not, unless it's like a stupid idea, like, oh yeah, we want bunny hats in the game. That's just not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. So certain things that go against the grain of what the game is just won't make it in. You can have like 5,000 people screaming it, and if it's just a bad idea, it's a bad idea. It's not good for the product. So, but other good ideas that bubble up to the top, make sense for the product, those actually make it to our list internally, and then we try to figure out a way to get it in the game.
I'll say on my side that I would think that the biggest challenge in what I see is sort of the future of game development, which is sort of this live game where you constantly develop it, and in the case of what we're doing in Star Citizen, and I guess like Warrior Online, you kind of got people involved early on as well, like sort of Alphabet, is that you're essentially getting people involved in the process before the game is finished. And in our case, it's very, very early. So everyone's bought into Star Citizen, and everyone has their idea of what Star Citizen is, right? And with 200,000 people, not everyone's it's just not going to match up. So that is definitely the challenge, because essentially when people join early, they're sort of buying into a dream as opposed to something tangible. So the solution, and I don't know if it's the correct solution, but it's what we're trying, is to really involve the community, to share them, to show them our process. Even to the point where we're delivering. We delivered on this past Thursday what we call the hangar module, which was very, very cut down early part of the game, which just allows you to walk around the hangar and see the ships that you've got. But it really is the very beginning base part of the executable. And if you go on our forums, you'll see some of the modders that have taken the ships out and put them into the Cry SDK and moved them around. But the idea is having people participate in that they sort of see the process. And so, because I think it's an education thing. I definitely think that one of the problems that you have in this new open development phase is that people don't really know how the games in the past have been made, because publishers tend to be very sort of tight-lipped about it and don't share the process. So for instance, Tim Schafer on his Broken Age got a lot of backlash when he announced that he was going to split the game a few months ago, and everyone was like, he's unprofessional, he doesn't know how to manage his money. And I was thinking, and I'll tell you, everyone up here that's been in the business for a long time will be like, you know what? There's nothing different that happened there that happens with every publisher that's happened for as long as I've ever been in the business. Every project I've known, almost never ships on time or on schedule or on budget, and usually if they do, they're not very good. So there's always, no, it's true though. I mean, if you think about the games that you don't think are particularly great, so those sort of licensed games that get cranked out, they're usually on time and on budget. That's because people that, it's like, oh, we just need to get the Spider-Man license out and that's it, or something like that. And I'm not knocking Spider-Man, I'm just saying that, I'm giving you an example of sort of the licensed stuff that's on schedule. And so it's difficult, and so I think the best approach is letting the community understand the process, sharing with what's happening, and then if something doesn't match up to what you thought, they're aware of the decision process that got you there. Because there's a lot of times where you think this feature will work well, and then when it comes down to it, it doesn't work that well. And you want to make a good game, so you sometimes will have to jettison that. And if you don't explain it, I think people can get upset. And so from my standpoint, I think transparency is the best way. I mean, there is some risk with that, but we're trying that out, and I guess you can check back with me in a couple of years and ask me if I think it's a good idea then. Let you know how it works.
Will do.
Real quick, I guess, I'm not just going to repeat everything that those two guys said, because they, I think, said it really well, but I think for us, it's also been a really challenging balance between the super hardcore, MechWarrior fan and everybody else. And, our game has always been, it's been a very core experience. I mean, at its heart, there's a lot of things we're very proud of. I mean, it's the first MechWarrior game that you actually have a complete mix of light, mediums, heavies installed all in the same match at the same time, and it functions and works. It's not an arms race. People actually use AC2s in our game. I mean, come on, that's the first for MechWarrior, pretty much. So a lot of it's working out really well, but sometimes it's like they said, it's just, right, we've got to this point, and we know the hardcore want these features right here, right now, but we kind of have to work on these features that are going to make it a lot easier for someone who isn't an encyclopedia of MechWarrior to understand what's going on and figure out how to play the game and get hooked in the game. And we just it's always a balance between those two things. But I like the quote over here that we're never a finished product. So we're updating the game every 2 weeks. It's coming more every 2 weeks.
All right, thank you guys. Much appreciated.
Hi. Two questions actually. One real quick. As a perennial coordinator for this, is Operation Supply Drop part of the CFC? So that, yeah.
Imagine what kind of governmental red tape you would have to go through to get onto that list. And good luck trying to, But yeah, that's a great idea, especially with first sergeants, kind of forcing you to donate to the CFC out of every paycheck. Y'all know how that works. But yeah, so it's probably a one-man shop trying to stay married and employed. It's kind of like, well, I'd love to do it. I'll have to look into it. It's not a bad idea, though.
Yeah. The other question I have is, with the development of the eye movement, desensitization and reprocessing therapy for PTSD, and like the Oculus Rift, have you guys heard or been asked for any input for development for, say, PTSD, treatment therapies or whatever, utilizing games that might help soldiers and sailors like myself returning from the war zone?
Was that directed at somebody or just development in general?
Just in general.
Okay.
No, not really. Not on the SOE side. So we don't have any internal development kits for Oculus or any plans to do anything on the client side with the Oculus, so I wouldn't be able to speak to that.
Yeah, we're going to support the Oculus on Star Citizen. I don't know if that will help in the situation, but you certainly will be able to be wearing the headset and looking around. So I basically have to know more about what it would entail.
Well, I don't mean just for the Oculus, but like in general, I thought the Oculus would be like a great forum for it because it's very immersive, but just in general.
Actually, let's put 2 cents into this. Palmer Lucky's a great guy, but it's one of his community managers named Joe Chen. He's a National Guard. He's getting ready to go to Ranger School. He's a scout platoon leader, and he loves us. So we're going to be working with them eventually too. But They are very pro-military friendly, and one of the things we discussed was setting up Oculus Rift setups overseas, so when guys are deployed, they can strap on the Oculus Rift and do a Skype call to their family back home. Now, Lord knows how that works. I'm just a dumb grunt, but I'm sure those people over there can figure it out. But just know that they are very pro-military, and I'm sure they'll bang something out.
Oh, you know how that's going to work. You know exactly where that's going. R-rated calls.
So my question is for Steve. As you know, the military has a terrible track record of keeping track of things, and you wind up having to relearn everything the next time a war starts. So I was wondering, with the with the Iraq War pretty much over and the war in Afghanistan drawing down, do you have any plans to kind of keep the blueprint for your operation alive, so that in the event that soldiers become deployed again in the future, we don't have to rely on romance novels and handwritten cards by 5th graders in Indiana?
It's called Syria, maybe recently. Yeah,
I'm hoping not to go there anytime soon. But
yeah, I mean, and this is going to sound terrible, but obviously war is good for us as an organization because that keeps us going. But that said, we obviously personally bring everybody the hell home. We are starting to work around that. Obviously, JSOC is a great work with us. We have a team over in Hawaii that we're working with to keep those guys from going to Singapore and all kinds of places on 3-month stints. We're keeping them outfitted and things like that. Also, knowing that this was coming, where we were coming with a hard 2015 exit strategy out of Afghanistan, and obviously that's where we're sending most of our care packages. We've been working with Walter Reed and Fort Belvoir, because I'm in DC. So just a quick jaunt for me to drive back and forth. We've been helping get games to troopers, and working with Able Gamers also, who's out of the Baltimore area. They've been helping us get controller grants to soldiers who with missing limbs, so one-handed Xbox controllers and things like that. So we're working with them on that right now. But yeah, it's definitely it was a concern. There was like oh crap, what am I going to do now? And it's like, well, there's still a lot of people, and anybody in the military knows once the war is over, everybody forgets about you. The fight, having toured the Walter Reed, just a critical care ward where soldiers are just coming off the plane from Landstuhl with like triple amputations and things like that. It's like, they're there for life. They're going to be there for years and years of rehab and things like that. So anything we can do to help out. So we've been working with them. But good question, thank you.
There's a community effort around that too. I'll give a shout out to a company that was here at PAX Delulu. They make what's called the Stinky Footboard, which is essentially a hat switch for your feet. And I know BWC members got on board with the Kickstarter and somewhat received them already. And as veteran gamers, oh wow, okay, now I can do everything I would with the hat switch with my foot because maybe I don't have a left arm. It's meaningful, and it's meaningful that there are various aspects of the gaming community, not just developers, but peripheral developers that are aware of that and aware of how they're helping. What you got?
Afternoon, everyone. I just have kind of a two-part question. One is going to be for the developers here, in that Mr. Machuga brought up a good point about when you're over deployed in a deployed location, you have lots of downtime. Do developers ever take into account that, like, oh, there goes the mic. Do they ever take into account, like, you may not have an internet connection, you may not have a speedy internet connection? Like, do you ever think of putting in, like, LAN or offline stuff, or is that usually left to communities such as Black Widow Company and other things like that to bring up and to voice those concerns? Because not everyone's going to be able to play, Titanfall when it comes out next year, because no one's going to be able to have like 30 people in a wet stack or in a canteen or whatever like that with high-speed internet to get the 60 frames per second and everything. Just curious if you had any ideas about that.
I mean, I'll say on the Star Citizen side, we deliberately have some offline components to it. So you can play the single-player story offline. You can also set up your own local server and run that outside of our big persistent universe. The persistent universe, you have to log into the big universe server because that's you playing with everyone else in the rest of the world, and that can't exist offline. But we deliberately have some offline components, like a single player story, which is like Wing Commander, or you set up your own sort of server, which is on a more limited basis. So that would be equivalent to the freelancer server setup that you can have on Freelancer. The other guys, I don't know.
We've got nothing.
Right.
And it's so single player to PlanetSide too. It's all about getting online and having a fairly decent connection.
I just wonder if like certain groups, kind of like the veteran groups or whatever, like ever influence any sort of design decisions, because when like PS4 and Xbox One are coming out, like when the Xbox One was announced and they said you had to have, every 24 hours you'll be checked if you're online. A lot of people, again, just internet talk and stuff like that, but we're saying like, oh, well, what are military groups going to do? What are you going to do when you're deployed? What are you going to do when you don't have this connection? And they've recently, backed up on those policies, probably because of the publicity and the marketing and all that. But I wonder, does like veteran groups ever, influence decisions or anything like that?
I know we got angry over constant logout, and I know there was some anger over some of the DRM that happened a few years ago as well. That if we're moving from base to base and if we're being deployed, having a CD in the tray isn't always an option. Having an always-on connection isn't always an option. So we would like to see more single-player kind of local sandbox aspects to game. Maybe not still the primary game, because we have to be aware of the fact that there are business models at play up here. So as consumers and as players, as much as we want to rail against that and complain, we also have to be realistic and go, maybe somewhere there can be a halfway mark that happens at. But yeah, we definitely voice those concerns.
Thank you.
Well, good afternoon. The gentleman in front of me stole one of my questions, so I'm trying to come up with one a little off the top of my head here, but it seems to me that from the developers, there's kind of a social contract that's being made with some of the veterans groups. And as a veteran myself, how can I reinforce that social contract or like meet my end of the social contract?
You sure you didn't come up with that earlier?
I think I can talk to that a little bit. MechWar has a lineage of being a war game. I've seen a lot of veterans play it. It's the story steeped in military history. You've asked Stuart Wiseman, one of the creators. He'll tell you Fall of Rome, all kinds of stories about where the inspiration came for the factions. When it comes to, for us, how you can be an effective member, it's really goes back to my earlier comments. Be a role model. What we're looking for is people who come to the table with passion, creativity, and great ideas that they want to share. And it's our job to try and build something for you that you love to play as much as we do and a million other players. So that's kind of the foundation. Be reasonable.
I would say it's not just with the military gamers, it's with all of our gamers. We are 100% basically responsible for your enjoyment. So anything that comes up on a Reddit forum or our internal forums or on Twitter or Facebook, whatever, we vet those concerns and try to address them as best we possibly can. So it's not just singling out any particular group. It's more about those who play our game and making sure that the people who are actually playing our game and have some experience with our game and can speak to it intelligently are actually being listened to. And the best, not saying that everything that you say is because you play the game 100 hours and you're number one on your server, it means that you know exactly what you're talking about, but you have some background and some experience that may be valid. And even if you don't like any particular move that we've made, like if we nerfed a certain weapon or buffed a certain one over another one, doesn't mean that we haven't listened to the people. We actually collect all of our data. Everything that you do inside the PlanetSide is collected and stored somewhere, and we can call that up at any point in time. So if you have a gripe about a particular weapon saying it's OP, we can look at the data and either prove you right or wrong. So it's just, and sometimes it's just perception. It's like, oh, I've been going up against these 5 guys and they all got the same weapon, and obviously I die every time, so that thing must be OP. But the reality of it may be that, hey, you just suck. Sometimes it happens. You're not, you might not be as good as you think you are. So I mean, but that's why we keep the data. So the alarm system is the player. The player say, hey, something's wrong over here. The data is the truth. So if the people rise up and say, hey, this is something that's bothering us, and we look at the data and it looks like it is bothering you guys, then we actually take action on those things, because we need to make sure that you guys are happy. But then if it's something like, hey, this thing is OP, and we look at the data and it says like, 2% of people die from this thing. So it's a perception thing. So then we don't ignore it, we take the time to actually explain why it is that your perception is off.
There's never any hyperbole in
Community feedback. No,
I mean, I would say, and this is a contract I would say for everybody that's in the community, not just on a veteran, is be a positive contributor to the community. So, and by the way, that doesn't mean always being, hey, this is great, I love it. But if you have a criticism, voicing that in a sort of constructive manner as opposed to a negative manner. And so that, I think that is one thing that I've noticed, which is, I go back to how I've seen BWC operate, is that whether it's positive or negative, it's always voiced in a constructive manner that you can understand, whether it's being not hysterical, not inflammatory, which, by the way, I think whoever goes on any forum can tell you that's not always the case. And that's basically what I look for anyone in our community. I'm actually quite happy to have positive or negative feedback, because it shows involvement, investment, and you really care about the outcome. It's much easier to respond to when it's done in a sort of sensible, constructive manner, as opposed to anything that's sort of too strident. So that's all I ask for, with the contract I want with everyone in the community.
I love the negative feedback. I actually thrive off of it, because it requires a level of commitment that is beyond most normal people. And so for you to have to go out of your way to say you suck, that requires effort, and I appreciate the effort. But then at the end of it, that conversation is so very enjoyable because I'm always right. So you can come at me like an ignorant fool, but I will make you look like an ignorant fool at the end of it.
All right, thank you. All right, we got time for one more.
Sorry, I'm short. I guess you guys can hear me. I was wondering, you touched a little bit on the PTSD aspect of things, and games maybe being a little too realistic. Can you guys talk a little bit about like war games and PTSD and how all of that kind of works together?
I had a real problem when I got back. Anybody, again, I hate to keep using that, if you've ever been deployed, I had a real problem on garbage day. If anybody's been deployed, insurgents like hiding IEDs in trash. So anytime I drive up and down the street, and trash is littered everywhere over there, they don't throw anything, it's just a constant trash pile everywhere. So I just had problems with that. So it took me a couple months, but it was video gaming that got me through that. Fast forward 10 years, and now you're seeing reports in Forbes and medical journals about people playing Tetris because it's like a spatial analysis kind of thing. Bottom line, it distracts somebody long enough to stop thinking about, hey, I need to keep my sight lines open. I'm watching for snipers on rooftops. It's like, oh, well, I'm not thinking about going back and playing some more video games. And it works for me. And apparently there's more and more medical basis behind video games actually being able to help troopers out. Does that sound?
You can set that up at the Gulf War to validating myself. But after the Gulf War, and after Somalia, there were certain things that were triggers, and any environment that's immersive that lets you forget that and turn your brain off of that wavelength for a great deal of time and actually get entertainment value out of it at the same time, a sense of accomplishment, a sense of going from A to B without getting shot at, is a positive thing.
So I would say, here's a question I'm just stopping you as far as that goes, since you happen to have 3 games up here that are basically all set in some future somewhere, so it's not hyper-real. You don't have someone from Battlefield 4 here, for instance. Is that, just curiosity from my side, is there a reason for that? Is it better to be sort of in some futuristic world, or is that not really relevant?
Well, you'd be surprised. One of our major donation requests, every single wish list we've ever gotten, and that is for 3 years of this, and that is a lot of wish lists. Every single one has a Battlefield or a Call of Duty, period. I don't know what that means. I don't know why that is. Either the guys who are forward know the difference, and they're like, yeah, this is a game, or the guys who are sitting in Kuwait, processing customs paperwork. They're like, well, we want to feel like we're part of the right. So
the answer is no to my question.
No.
I think it's generational, actually. I think that is honestly a generational veteran issue where, there weren't Call of Duties when I was deployed. There weren't console games to the degree there are right now. I personally like environments that I can read a book about, your IP specifically, and then immerse in them and know that they're detached enough that you're not recreating Panama in your game. You're not recreating, the Gulf War in your game. For maybe perhaps for older veterans, there's some solace there. There's some good, safe escapism in those properties.
What about all those scientists out there who say video games cause people to kill other people?
Bullshit. I mean,
man, video games, violence, teaching people how to kill other people. I'm like, come on, man, I'm stopping people from killing people. It's like, if I can go shoot somebody fake in the face, then I'm not going to shoot somebody real in the face. And I've already got that out of my system.
I'm with him on that, but if you ever played like a marathon burnout session and then jump in your car and come on, am I right? Right? Obviously, there is something there. So I'm sure if somebody's on that edge already and they're just spending 18 hours a day shooting people in the face, they're just like, I can do this.
I think
some racing games.
I think I have said out loud, starting Beltway traffic, why does my Durango not have SRM 6s? Because really, that would solve a lot of issues. Have we answered your question?
Yeah, I was just wondering about like triggers. Some games that are maybe too realistic, and especially like Battlefield and stuff like that. It's getting to be more modern. We're fighting terrorists or whatever. Are there trigger issues that you guys know?
Modern Warfare 2, one of the first missions has you as a ranger, I'm a ranger, as a ranger company going over a bridge into Kabul when they're taking back the capital. And I had my headset in, and I'm one of those people that's like, video games, it's not for real. And Hank Kiersey, Colonel Hank Kiersey is Activision's military liaison. He makes sure he's got their shit locked down. Sorry. 10 push-ups. But the audio quality and the radio chatter, that was spot on. And as those Humvees were driving over the bridge, and you got the turret gunners up and everything, I was having a little bit of problem. It was spot on. So, I was fine. It wasn't like I was in there, shaking in my, lounge chair. But it was one of those, how much, I'm right there with you where it's like, this is getting a little too real. So, it triggered something. It wasn't like, game breaking for me, but yeah.
How do you find the balance there?
You just keep playing, and then you call in a C-130. It's not, or not a C-130. But games like Black Ops 2, where they just take it to the other extreme, where it's just like, all right, this isn't realistic. But when they're starting to I know what you're saying, but even like America's Army and things like that, I don't know. But yes, it could very easily tip a soldier over.
The balance is winning.
Yeah, that's true too.
If you win the game, if you survive from point A to point B, then you've survived from point A to point B. And that's how I know a lot of people cope with that. So that's how they still find enjoyment in these ultra-realistic games. You're welcome. I think that wraps us up. I want to personally thank everyone up here for your time. I know some of you traveled a great distance to be here just for this hour of time at PAX, and I really appreciate it. From BWC, we appreciate you guys being here. This matters. The philanthropy aspect matters. The veterans and gaming aspect really matters to us, and it matters to anyone that's been in uniform. So it's absolutely appreciated, and I just thank you very much. And from BWC, as we say, one team, one party. Thank you guys.